Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tom Whitney. I'm the Global VP of Solutions Consultancy at Chattermill, and I'm really excited today to be your moderator for the panel discussion right now on driving revenue through customer experience in finance. So in this session, we're going to be talking about today's competitive landscape around customer experience, and we're likely going to abbreviate that a lot to CX today. And we're going to argue that goes far beyond simply addressing issues and complaints. CX is about creating personalized experiences that not only meet customer needs, but they also foster loyalty. And in turn, that drives significant revenue. So the companies that fail to prioritize CX certainly have risk. They risk losing customers. They risk missing out on crucial revenue opportunities. So with that in mind, we're here today to explore how businesses, specifically in finance and the finance industry, can leverage CX to boost revenue. We'll be diving into thoughts from a couple of industry leaders who I'll introduce in a second, and we'll discuss the importance of AI-driven tools and showcase some real-world examples of how Chattermill has played a pivotal role in helping finance brands increase revenue. So let me introduce our esteemed panelists today. We've got Dalia El-Shimy, who's a Director of UX Research at Wise. Hi, Dalia.
Hi.
And we've got Michelle Sterzovsky, who's Senior Director of Product Strategy at Greenlight. Hello, Michelle.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you both for being here today. And thank you for everyone watching as well, of course. Let's dive in straight away. So to kick things off, I've got a first question, which I'd like to begin with. I want to attempt to understand the role of CX in driving revenue, which I mentioned up top. So Michelle, perhaps you could start by giving us an overview of how Greenlight approaches this.
Yeah, absolutely. So Greenlight is a subscription business. So retention, obviously, is a key driver of revenue. And in turn, we know that retention is correlated with both satisfaction and feature engagement. I know that this sounds very, very intuitive, and it really is. But our team has done some amazing work on the data science front, digging into this correlation, understanding exactly how these metrics work together in our world, at least, so we can effectively prioritize initiatives and estimate business impact. So, of course, we do track retention per se, but we also track variety and type of feature used. Is it just the debit card, which is our flagship product, if you will? Is it something else? And what is the impact on retention of that specific feature that is being used? We also track customer satisfaction. We run deep quarterly CSAT studies that go far beyond just like actual satisfaction and dig into the customer's experience. And we also keep a daily pulse on our users' experience with ongoing NPS surveys. So Tom, going back to your question, an improvement in customer experience can influence these metrics, and we can assign a revenue impact to that change.
Nice, linking it together. Makes sense. Thank you. And Dalia, what about from your perspective at Wise as well? How do you see CX playing a role specifically in revenue generation?
Yeah, so one of the things that is pretty unique about Wise, well, I don't know if I would say unique, but something that's pretty pertinent to us is the extent to which customers having a positive experience actually influences other customers to try Wise. So I can speak from a personal experience in that I started using Wise because my partner was using Wise, and I had at some point needed a way to send money internationally. And he was like, well, why don't you try this product? And he was using Wise because he knew someone else who was using Wise. And when he was freelancing in one country and getting paid with a currency from another country, his friend had recommended he use Wise. And so I've definitely experienced the extent to which this type of word of mouth is really important to us. And it's something that's really baked into our strategy. So we definitely monitor NPS as a way. I think we look at it as sort of one of the best proxies for the extent to which people are actually, literally likely to recommend our products to people that they know. And we track the sort of qualitative comments in NPS as well to see what are the things that we are shipping that are improving or decreasing NPS, and what we might want to do about them to make sure that we are continuing to sustain that word of mouth, which has been so critical in Wise's growth. And one thing more recently that we've kind of also done on my team, so I lead the user experience research team at Wise, is that we've started doing more analysis of social media sentiment. So particularly looking at what people had to say on Facebook groups about their experiences at Wise versus their experiences with some of our other competitors. For any comments that are sort of publicly available, we can download and analyze them. And we've been actually playing around with Chattermill as well to see the extent to which we can drive this sort of social media sentiment analysis within Chattermill.
Oh, nice. Yeah, social media's got, there's a lot in there of value. I'm pretty sure your husband probably didn't tweet his recommendation to you, though he probably talked to you directly, I imagine, for that word of mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much both for that. Let's talk metrics then. Obviously both of you mentioned things like NPS or CSATs in your answers. Michelle, what key performance indicators, KPIs, do you focus on when you're measuring the success of CX initiatives?
Yeah, so of course it will depend on each initiative and what it actually entails. But tied to what I was mentioning on retention, feature usage, and satisfaction as key priorities, the main metrics we look at that constantly pop up regardless of the initiative are feature engagement, churn, and then traditional KPIs like you were mentioning, Tom, on like NPS or CSAT. But one thing that we also track is input metrics. So those are output metrics like at a higher level, like at the executive level, if you will. But then we track input metrics to these, such as customer support tickets or call volumes. So one example, before for moving money from your Greenlight account back to your funding source, you had to go through customer support and get that done that way. When we launched a self-service feature, we obviously expected instances of users reaching out to support to get help with this to decrease drastically. Luckily, it did happen, but we wanted to keep an eye out on that. I think getting really granular with input metrics helps you dig into like drivers of performance or of underwhelming metrics a little bit better. So always also we try to translate these both output and input into an actual revenue number. It can be incremental revenue or cost savings. Again, this will depend on the actual initiative that we're working with. But I think this just makes everything and the impact more tangible, easier to communicate across the org, and it helps inform future prioritization of initiatives. You say, hey, I did this, accomplished like this much in revenue. That just gives you a little bit of ammunition.
Definitely, yeah. That communication to different stakeholders is so key. If people don't get it, the KPI is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to fly for sure. Dalia, what about yourself as well? How do you measure the ROI of CX?
Yeah, so at Wise, we have some sort of key metrics that span all of our product teams that we tend to look at, and then individual, like we have tribes and then squads and then teams. They then define their own metrics that relate to those higher level metrics that we're trying to drive at a company level, as well as more specific ones that can sort of help them measure more granularly the impact of the features that they're shipping. We also do a lot of opportunity sizing when we are doing our planning to try and predict ahead of time what is going to be the estimated impact of a particular initiative that we work on to kind of help the teams make a bit more informed decisions. So we try to do some estimations as to the extent to which we believe certain initiatives are going to move the needle on some of those key metrics compared to others. And when it comes to CX specifically, one thing that I find really interesting about Wise that I would say has been different from other companies that I've worked at is that we actually treat customer support as a product in its own right. So we have full-on product teams who work as part of what we call our servicing tribe. So designers who work on the tooling that our customer support agents use, researchers who try to understand the experiences not only of our customers with customer support, but also the agents and what their experience is like and what we can do to sort of make things better for them as well. And as we have specific metrics that we track, of course, like every sort of like customer support department in terms of, the speed at which we're able to resolve issues, the rate at which we're able to resolve them. But we track those as well as we bake improvements to the customer experience as a product itself. So the improvements that the engineers, the designers, and so on ship and that the researchers support them with, we tend to track those as well to understand how these are impacting our broader CX metrics.
Interesting. And yeah, I guess seeing support as a product in and of itself has echoes of Michelle's point about the inputs and outputs metrics there. Around seeing support in that way. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that great insights there. Moving on to think a little bit about tooling, and what you use to improve on those metrics. I'll start with Michelle again. You mentioned earlier that retention's vital, and I think you said obviously retention's vital because of your sort of your membership subscription approach. It seems like a pretty obvious point I'm going to make back to you as well, but that must be quite difficult to achieve retention because people can go and bank elsewhere. They can take a different card out. How does AI factor into the CX strategy to address pain points? Why people might want to leave, and how does it help you to streamline efforts?
Today, we don't really use any AI tools for analyzing or processing customer feedback. We're not a Chattermill customer at the moment, but we are analyzing a couple of different alternatives that could help. Why we think that we need the help right now, we receive a lot of customer feedback from a lot of different sources. We have CSAT and NPS responses, customer research, app reviews, customer support tickets, just to name a few. And we just get more than we can chew. We cannot analyze it all. And the analysis is just not done holistically, given that all these different pieces of feedback that I mentioned are scattered across systems, and the analysis itself is done by different teams. The outcome also is not always really actionable. Ideally, you want something that will help you inform your product roadmap, but I don't think we're always there. So we have taken some steps to address these pain points, working across the different teams involved in the process to consolidate the feedback, provide visibility across the organization. But we believe that there's a lot more that can be done. Hence our current exploration that I mentioned of AI tools, see what we can do to work a little bit more efficiently.
Oh, definitely. Thanks very much. And Dalia, Wise are a Chattermill customer. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you could share a little bit about how Chattermill has helped at Wise.
Yeah, so I'd say the primary use case that we've had it for has been the NPS, and particularly analyzing the comments. And we'll also see that individual teams will take the NPS feedback, query it for specific keywords, and then do their own analysis of the comments to see the specific impact that their features or the part of the product that they own has on NPS overall. In terms of using AI, so we've been sort of within my team, at least, kind of proceeding with cautious optimism. So we're not kind of approaching it from the perspective of, like AI will give you all of the answers and you can just put whatever you want in it and it's going to spit out exactly the insights that you want. But rather, we're trying to figure out what is the role of the human, what is the role of the AI when it comes to analyzing qualitative feedback, especially when you have qualitative feedback at scale. So some of the things that we'll do is like we might do a pass with a researcher first manually combing through the data and trying to figure out what are relevant themes, and then using that to inform what sort of pass with AI might look like, and then checking the answers at the end. And as we're kind of experimenting with different ways of ensuring that the analysis is sound on both ends from the human and the AI, we're also developing or we're updating our own guidance to the teams on how they might use it as well. Because of course, one of the benefits of having access to LLMs and AI is that it kind of opens up the opportunity for other people to do the analysis as well. But we don't want to run into a risk or a scenario where people are just blindly taking whatever it spits at them. So we're being very deliberate in telling them this is what it's good for, this is what it's less good for, this is what you need to be able to do in order to trust the information that's coming out the other end.
Talia, if you end up using one of the tools, I'll pick your brain on that. It seems like you're a little bit further ahead than us on that front.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's great. Thank you. And yeah, those guardrails, I guess you could call it, or instructions for how to use it in something as new as AI is. Regardless of what technology specifically you're using, so important as well to make sure people know what they're going to get out of it 100%. And how to use it. Great, and obviously great to hear that Chattermill is proving valuable to you as well. Let's get back to that all-important retention point then, and keeping customers happy. Let's go back to Michelle again. Could you touch upon how feature usage, I think you mentioned that before, and you said obviously your card is your main product, but then there's obviously multiple features within that. How does that relate to retention and loyalty?
Yeah, of course. So, like I mentioned earlier, we are a subscription business, and our subscription tiers consist of different feature bundles. It's a good, better, best structure. So, what this means is that each user is paying to access all the features in their specific bundle, and nobody likes to pay for things that they don't use. So, we focus on feature engagement as a satisfaction and retention driver. We want users to discover all the features that their plan or bundle has, to activate them, and to make the most of them with their family. We think that ultimately this drives customer satisfaction and engagement, which in turn leads to a higher retention and continued revenue.
Nice. And Dalia, from your side, how does CX drive loyalty, I guess, trust as well? And obviously, trust is really crucial in financial, in financial sectors, financial institutions.
Yeah, so we've actually spent quite a bit of time looking at trust as a concept. We have something at Wise called the Trust Pillar, which is essentially a group of teams who look at all different parts of the experience that actually end up contributing to the trust that users might develop or that might be eroded with them if we don't necessarily approach it correctly. So this encompasses everything from how they onboard and how we can build trust during onboarding, to how we do the KYC or know your customer verification, to how their experiences with customer support looks like, to the efforts that we put into financial crime prevention. So the amount of education that we provide there, how we help protect them from scams. I think those are all really important touch points throughout the customer journey, where you have an opportunity to increase trust and to improve the overall customer experience. But one of the things that we've additionally learned through a lot of the research that my team has done is that this idea of trust is sort of not monolithic. It's not like trust means one thing for all users at all parts of their journey. So for some customers, trust, it can be more about safety and security. So knowing that their information is safe, that their funds are secure. For other people, trust means that, especially with a product like Wise, where we do a lot of sort of money transfer, that's one of our biggest value propositions. It's knowing that the money is going to arrive to the person you're sending it to quickly, and that you know where your money is at all times, and that the transaction is seamless and you don't have to worry where it is. Trust for some people means that you can access customer support 24 hours a day, and that there's always going to be a human who's there. Especially, we hear a lot from people that, the idea of digital banks, they can't wrap their heads around the fact that they can't walk into a bank and be able to talk to a human. So we have to figure out how to create that same level of trust at different touch points in the journey. And of course, a new user who's not familiar with the brand is going to think about trust and whether they want to place their trust with us very differently from someone who's been with the brand and with the company for a long time. So by understanding all of these different nuances and kind of approaching it from the perspective that trust is going to have multidimensional meanings, and that there's different ways that we need to be looking at it throughout the entire customer experience, it's helped us think a little bit better about how do we, put our messaging, our positioning, how do we need to build our features to make sure that we're touching on all of those correct points throughout the journey, and reflecting how that changes over time, even for the same user.
Fascinating. Yeah, I never quite thought about how trust is such a big concept. I guess it's not just a word. I guess maybe if a bank said "trust us," there's probably everyone would think the opposite, right? So it's so important to figure out what does trust actually mean to those customers, because they're not just going to trust you by asking them to do so.
For sure.
Brilliant, thank you. The next question I've got is actually for both of you. So answer in whichever order you prefer, but I'd like either of you or both of you to share a case study or a success story, or even just an anecdote where enhanced customer experience, you've both mentioned support in different ways, trust, of course, contributed to revenue growth for your brand or a client of your brand.
I can go first if you want to. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So one example that comes to mind is our work on dashboard personalization. And by dashboard, I mean what you see in your homepage when you open the app. So we tailor this dashboard to display relevant information for each user based on their segment. And you can define segment really broadly with like age, frequency of use, plan they're in, what features have used before. But I'm going to keep it simple and just stay with segment. But we personalize the experience to drive, and I know I'm sounding repetitive, but to drive feature discovery and usage. So for example, one of the features that we offer, it's is direct deposit. So when teens get a job, they can connect that to their Greenlight account and kind of get their money directly deposited into it. So if a child is 8 years old, why would I even show direct deposit anywhere in the dashboard? At least above the fold, definitely not, probably nowhere in the dash. But it's that type of personalization, just like showing people relevant things to them, and also anticipating what they will want to see, that has led to a significant lift in a couple of key metrics, such as engagement, activation, and even upgrade rates. Because remember, we have like tiers that are bundled. So sometimes we can surface like relevant features that we know would add value to the user, and that are part of more premium tiers. Investing for kids being an example, or like features around driving safety. We know that like a child is already of driving age. So people can see that, realize the value, and actually upgrade and pick a higher tier plan. So this deeper engagement not only improved the overall experience, because you just see things that are more relevant to you versus just a generic dashboard, but also contributed to higher revenue. So a win-win over here. And a similar example, if I may just say two small use cases, is our work on user onboarding. Kind of similar to the work on the dashboard, we build these clear, personalized onboarding experiences that guide users to the features that they will add the most value to them, or that they will want to use based on who they are, or even like where they come from, like what ad did they click on, like what flow did they follow during registration, in order to become a customer.
Nice. Really useful. Thank you. Dalia, do you have a story of your own?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that my team does when we do research is sort of trying to understand what are some of the things that we can change or iterate on in the product in order to drive the right kind of impact and help the teams meet their metrics. And one example for the past year that was really successful was around localizing our homepage. So what you see when you're logged out or a new prospective user and you go to wise.com, you might be familiar with the fact that we did a big rebrand a couple of years back. And with that, we sort of had like one homepage that we showed to pretty much all our users, regardless of where they were located in the world. And we started doing research to then try to understand how we might localize that page a little bit better to certain markets. And the US was a really interesting one. And the researcher who did that work decided not just to do a sort of run-of-the-mill usability test to see what worked and what didn't, but rather try to understand what made those particular customers different and what they expected from Wise as a product and as a brand that might be different from, for example, the UK or the European market. And so based on their understanding of what those customers wanted to see, we were able to update the homepage. And that particular localization effort actually led to a pretty substantial uplift in some of the key metrics for that team and big improvements to the conversion rates, which of course translates ultimately to a positive impact on revenue. And so, yeah, it's by taking the time to understand that not all customers are going to be expecting the same thing. And, you know, we sometimes can't go as far as like full personalization, but if we can at least take the time to make sure that we understand different groups differently, that we're localizing in the right way, we can definitely serve them with something that's more relevant for them.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I'm sure we could fill a whole other session on the differences between US and UK customers for sure, but maybe that's for another day. Let's talk a little bit maybe about how this isn't always easy, right? You know, I'm sure that the various things you talked about haven't been sort of plain sailing all the way. What are some of the more common challenges that finance brands, I guess, you know, like your own, face in scaling the CX strategies? And how have you overcome them? How can they overcome them?
Dalia can go first in this one.
So I've worked in the finance space not a huge amount of time. It's been less than a year for me, but I think that the challenges that I'm seeing here are actually quite similar to challenges that I've seen in other tech companies, which is that tension between needing to move fast and ship things really quickly versus like taking the time to try and understand what the problem actually is and to look at the signals and to do a proper analysis and to engage with the customers. And so I think striking that balance can often be really difficult. And one of the things, especially as researchers, that we try to do is to help teams strike that balance. It's to kind of, when we're looking at questions that we believe we have reasonable confidence on, or that the teams can just go ahead and make the decision to kind of help them move forward with that. And then also on the other end, being able to kind of help them pause when we believe that something's going to be too risky to make a decision around, if we don't take the time to actually understand the problem and understand what our customers are telling us. Another thing that we often see is that people interchangeably use the concepts of doing research versus talking to customers. And I believe that they're both very important, and I don't think that one is a substitute for another. So if you work at a tech company where you have a dedicated research team, but you're not a researcher, that doesn't absolve you from actually having conversations with your customers directly. It's more a matter that we need to be really careful in helping teams understand what they can get out of research and what they can get out of talking to customers. So research is what I turn to when we want to answer very specific questions. We want to go about it in a way that is rigorous, where the findability of the results is going to be replicable, where the risk is high of not getting the answers right. Whereas talking to customers is something that I think everybody should be engaging in as a way of hearing from them directly, of building empathy, of getting signals that you might then want to turn into additional explorations with research and data. And I think sometimes just to get out of your own headspace, like I think sometimes teams tend to kind of get tunnel vision and talk amongst themselves and stare at a problem for too long. And sometimes it just takes like one or two, customer conversations to kind of help unlock something different or help you see the world a little bit differently. And then, at my previous role at Miro, we'd actually like built a fairly robust voice of the customer program, where on a monthly basis, we would have a company-wide ritual where we heard insights, not just from researchers, but from analysts, customer support, marketing research, basically anyone who's producing any forms of insights. And it definitely took us a while to kind of hit the right cadence and the right format. But eventually we were able to get quite a few hundred people tuning into the call. Our CEO, CPOs would tune in as well. And I think that having, especially our senior leaders, being part of these rituals, being engaged, showing up, asking questions, definitely set the bar and set an example for the rest of the company tuning in. So I think overall, that type of advocacy can go a really long way towards getting people to actually, like I was saying earlier, when they don't have the time to pause and kind of engage with customers, to actually see it as a really important part of their job and something critical that they need to do.
Definitely. Thank you. Michelle, any thoughts of your own on this?
I would echo everything that Dalia mentioned. What resonates especially is the organizational buy-in for CX, just making sure that kind of whatever you do from a voice of the customer perspective resonates with the org, and at the top as well. Obviously, like people need to set the tone at the top, and then it will cascade down. So these are some things that we're actually currently navigating, especially as, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to systematize a voice of the customer program and provide increased visibility across Greenlight. So that really resonates a lot with me. One thing that I would add is a challenge that we come across that is separating noise from signal. So for example, we might receive a lot of requests about a particular feature, but when we survey a more representative sample of our users, we find that maybe the feedback isn't really as widespread as it seemed. So squeaky wheel kind of gets the grease, or that there is some nuance to the feedback, and actually you could address the customer's pain point with something that's a little bit different than the feature that they're requesting. But I guess that's the role of the product org, is understanding, okay, how can I address the pain point in the most efficient and also broad and applicable way.
Definitely, for sure. Thanks both. Last question of this session, and again, this one's for both of you. Maybe we'll start with Michelle this time. What do you see as the biggest opportunities? We've just been negative. Let's go positive now. What are the biggest opportunities for finance brands to drive revenue through customer experience innovation?
Yeah. Hey, we have shared success stories, so it's not all negative.
That's true.
I think one of the most significant opportunities lies in personalization, and this is related to the couple of success stories that I shared. But I think we're just only scratching the surface. I think there's an opportunity to tailor experiences everywhere. In the website, like Dalia was mentioning, when you register an onboarding, when you use the app, when you reach out to customer support, when you interact with like our CRM messaging, just in every touch point with the brand, I think that there is an opportunity to tailor experiences. I think it just resonates better with customer. And also, it's just becoming table stakes. All other brands are doing this, so customers will realize if you just like give them something boilerplate when they interact with you. So we can't stay behind. And one additional opportunity that I'm really excited about is providing some human-centric interactions. So now this may not be the most cost-effective, but I think there are ways to leverage the human touch in strategic moments to surprise and delight users while maintaining efficient operations. So one example that we did is offering support for users who are trying to perform certain complex actions in the app, but haven't been able to do so themselves. So we see that they started, but they didn't finish. One example is like setting up their investing profile, which you need to answer a bunch of questions and then kind of set up your risk tolerance, etc. It's a kind of an invested process, or even like finishing registration. So we tested having some like reach out offering to talk to a human, kind of guide them through the process. And we did see a significant increase in action completion this way. So the examples I mentioned, either actually setting up and using our investing feature or finishing your registration. So like I've been saying, this just ties back to revenue. So again, you're just providing a better experience that resonates with the customer and that they find value in, while also driving revenue for your own company.
Great idea. Great idea. Dalia.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Michelle has said in terms of the human interaction, particularly when it comes from the customer support side and all of the sort of like KYC experiences and enhanced due diligence experience and all of those things that, you know, banking and fintechs might have, companies might have to think about. So I think for us, we're always exploring how we can innovate in that area. And we've realized a long time ago that especially as our customer base scales, the solution to providing a better experience isn't just to grow the number of customer support agents that we have in step with that, because that just is going to hit a ceiling at some point, but rather thinking of other ways that we can improve the experience. So we're looking a lot at sort of automations, at integrations, at the role that AI can play in helping us process the documents that our customers are providing, making sure that, you know, we're not bothering them too many times over when we're doing our checks with asking for different documents, but rather are able to kind of do the interpretation and the checks as seamlessly as possible from our side. And like I was saying earlier, I think customer support is a really integral part of any fintech, just because of the sort of expectations that have been set by traditional banks and the fact that we're literally dealing with people's money. So I think taking the time to invest in customer support and all the experiences that go along with that can definitely go a long way towards improving retention and improving the overall customer experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much to both of you. I think I need to wrap up now. And so to do that, firstly, of course, I want to thank both of you. Thank you to Michelle, to Dalia for your incredible insights there. I've learned a lot, and hopefully everyone viewing has learned a lot about how customer experience is not just about solving problems. It's also about proactively driving revenue through, whether that be through AI, whether that be through personalization, building trust. We talked about. We've heard some real world examples of these strategies and how they've created measurable success, from KYC to support, from word of mouth to retention. I guess the big point here is to stay competitive in the finance industry, and probably other industries too. Brands must continue to innovate in CX. That's the last point I'd like to make, but thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and especially again to Michelle and to Dalia. Those of you with questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. We'll make sure to follow up and get back to anything via email after the session. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Stay with us and watch other sessions with our partners at Alchema. There's one focusing on the power of real-time analysis at scale for survey feedback and for AI. Otherwise, you better watch this session and others on demand too. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.